I was the clinical supervisor at a residential treatment facility for children while I was in the doctoral program at Mount Mary University. As part of a leadership course, I chose to create programming to address the power differences between staff and families at the organization where I worked. At that time, there were not social opportunities for families to meet and interact with other family members and staff members at our facility. I saw this gap in services as an opportunity to create a program. I proposed a monthly 3-hour weekend workshop for the families of children living at the center. My plan was that there would be art making that focused on celebrating and sharing the strengths of the families who attended, followed by a communal meal. I envisioned that direct care staff and clinical staff would participate in the workshops as an opportunity to interact with the families and children we worked with in an art-based way. To my surprise, when I pitched my idea to my colleagues, some responded with anger and skepticism. In an attempt to orient myself and to learn more about the reaction to my proposal, I created a scribble drawing that turned into a fish stew with whipped cream on top. I shared the drawing with my leadership class, who responded creatively with their own art and writing. Their reactions helped me to understand the drawing's significance and how I could proceed less dogmatically with my proposed family workshop project. My art piece and my classmates' responses to it helped me to understand that I was making my plans for change in our agency in isolation. I was metaphorically whipping up a fish stew and trying to serve it to everyone, and I hadn't even considered if my colleagues liked or wanted to eat fish stew. In the drawing, the stew was topped with whipped cream and a cherry, a metaphor for the way I was trying to make this programming change palatable. I was disguising my agenda to challenge the power dynamics between staff and families as a fun, collaborative, art-based dinner party, and my colleagues saw right through it. With my plan to mastermind new programming to address the power differentials between staff and families thwarted, I decided to conduct interviews and to survey staff members about their experience and feelings surrounding work with families. As I inquired about my coworkers' outlook and understanding about families, I learned that there were several problems that I had overlooked in my enthusiastic workshop planning. First, I was asking my coworkers to spend time making art and eating with the families of the children we worked with. In many cases, the family members had been abusive or neglectful to the child in our care, and some staff members were angry that I was asking them to interact casually with them. I was also offering a free meal to family members, and we were already housing their children for them. Some staff members saw my efforts to bring families and staff together for a meal as a reward that overlooked the fact that they were unsuccessful parents. Another issue that arose, specifically for the clinical staff, was that I was asking them to interact in a personal way with families, which eroded the professional boundaries they believed were important to their therapy practice. By listening to coworkers and reflecting with my artwork, I began to understand more deeply why my proposed workshops were outside of their comfort zone, and in some cases contrary to what they believed was best practice clinically. I recognized I was forcing my agenda for change without collaborating with the people I expected to help me implement this new program. I was witness to the disempowerment of families within the agency, and I wanted to help the staff and the other clinicians to reframe their perception of families in order to see them as a resource. Because I was an agency administrator, I felt it was my responsibility to conceptualize and direct change. By listening to my colleagues and using my artwork to reflect, I realized I was repeating the same problematic power dynamics if I used my authority as an administrator to enforce my agenda. I recognized that effective leadership relied on being open and not having all the answers. I distributed the results of the staff interviews and surveys to my coworkers. I shared my artwork, and I held collaborative discussions about our work with families. Over time, I was able to gain enough support to hold the workshops, while honoring that some of my coworkers were not comfortable participating. Some of my colleagues found that making art and eating a meal with the children and families we worked with improved their relationships with families and made some of the aspects of their work easier. This story illustrates my learning as an art therapist and an administrator to hold or orient the center of a project, but also to invite collaboration and explore solutions together. I learned through this process to attend to others and to be honest about both the negative and positive aspects of the work we did with struggling children and their families. I found in this instance that listening, reflection, and collaboration led to workshops for families that were welcomed within the agency instead of forced by my agenda for change. By using my artwork as an orienting resource, I was able to make changes in the way that I was leading. I was able to provide structure and hold the space open for a solution that was collaborative.